Dawn breaks over the northern coast of Japan. A samurai scout on the cliffside sees something on the water he's never seen before. Not fishing boats, not trading vessels. 40 long, narrow ships cutting through the morning fog at impossible speed, each one carved into the shape of a dragon at the bow. Each one packed with 30 warriors in iron and leather. There are over 1,200 of them, and they're not lost. Now here's the thing nobody talks about. Every time someone asks this question, Vikings versus samurai, they assume they already know the answer. The Vikings are bigger, louder, more aggressive. The samurai are more disciplined, more precise, more lethal at close range. So the samurai win, right? Not so fast. Because the Vikings didn't build an empire stretching from Newfoundland to Constantinople by losing. They sacked Paris. They burned monasteries from Ireland to Sicily. They shattered professional armies that outnumbered them 3-1. And they did it without gunpowder, without cavalry charges, without any of the things European commanders depended on. Just iron, muscle, and a tactical doctrine that turned the first 60 seconds of any battle into pure chaos, on purpose. The samurai, by this point, have fought and won wars that would make most European commanders quit on the spot. 300 years of constant internal warfare, a code that treats death as preferable to surrender. A weapon, the katana, with a cutting edge refined over generations of metallurgy that Europe wouldn't match for another 400 years. So we have two killing systems, both battle-tested, both genuinely terrifying, both completely foreign to each other. One fights like a hammer, raw power, shock, forward momentum that doesn't stop until something breaks. The other fights like a blade, precision, formation, patience, and the kind of discipline that turns an enemy's panic into a tactical advantage. Only one walks off this beach. And the answer is not what you think. Before we get into the battle, if you've got a matchup you want to see next, drop it in the comments right now. Two armies, two empires, two moments in history that never actually met. The best ideas become the next video. Hit subscribe, leave a like. Let's start with the Vikings, because most people massively underestimate them. A typical Viking raiding force in the 10th century fields between 800 and 1,200 warriors. These aren't peasants with axes. These are professional fighters who've been training since they could walk. The average Viking warrior stands around 5 feet 10 inches tall, enormous by medieval standards, and carries between 40 and 60 pounds of gear into battle. A round shield roughly 30 inches across, a spear around 7 feet long, a single-edged sword, or a bearded axe with a blade that can punch straight through iron plate at close range. But the weapon isn't the point. The doctrine is. Vikings fight in a formation called the skjaldborg, the shield wall. Shields locked edge to edge, spears bristling forward, the entire front line moving as a single mass of iron and muscle. It's not just a defensive formation, it's a pressure system. The wall advances, compresses the enemy's space, kills the room to maneuver, and turns the fight into exactly the kind of grinding close-quarters nightmare, where Viking size and aggression become the deciding factor. And then the berserkers go through it like a door that was never locked. These aren't mythological figures, they're a real tactical unit. Warriors who work themselves into a state of controlled, overwhelming aggression before contact, making them functionally immune to pain in the first minutes of combat. They don't hold the line, they shatter it. One berserker unit hitting a formation that's already been compressed by a shield wall doesn't just break the line, it causes a collapse, a psychological implosion. Men who were holding their ground 30 seconds ago are suddenly running. This is exactly what happened to the Franks at the Seine, to the Anglo-Saxons at Malden, to professional armies across 3 continents. Now here's what the samurai bring to the same beach. A Japanese garrison of this period fields between 1,000 and 1,500 warriors, drawn from clans that have been at war with each other for generations. These aren't conscripts. These are men who started weapons training at age 5, who can loose 8 arrows per minute from horseback at full gallop, and who carry 2 swords as a single integrated weapons system. The longer katana for open combat, the shorter wakizashi for close quarters. Not as backup options, but as 2 phases of the same kill. The katana is worth 1 number. The blade is forged at over 1,400 degrees, folded and worked until the edge reaches a hardness that European swordsmiths wouldn't match for another 400 years. It doesn't just cut, it separates. A Viking's iron helmet, the kind that stops a Saxon sword cold, offers maybe 2 inches of protection against a katana strike delivered at full rotation. That's not a lot of margin. But the samurai's real advantage isn't the sword, it's the bow. The Japanese longbow, the yumi, stands over 7 feet tall and fires an arrow at around 400 feet per second. At 150 feet, it punches through light armor like it isn't there. And a samurai archer doesn't just shoot. He shoots accurately, repeatedly, from a formed position while his front line holds. The opening phase of any samurai engagement isn't a charge. It's a systematic destruction of everything standing in front of them before anyone gets close enough to swing. First the arrows, then the blades, then silence. So here's the problem the samurai actually face. The shield wall isn't like anything in their experience. Japanese warfare is built around individual combat, clan formations, and open field archery. The Skjalborg is none of those things. It's a single organism moving forward under a roof of overlapping iron, absorbing arrows, eating ground, getting closer with every step. At 150 feet, the samurai archers are dangerous. At 50 feet, with berserkers already breaking through the flanks, the entire tactical picture changes in under 60 seconds. The Vikings can close that distance. The samurai need to make sure they never do. And that leads us to the beach, the fog, and the moment the first Viking boot hits Japanese sand. The drakkars hit the beach at dawn, 40 ships grinding into the sand simultaneously, prows splintering against rock, over 1,200 men pouring over the sides before the hulls stop moving. No hesitation, no reconnaissance, no waiting to see what's on the other side of the tree line. Vikings don't land and assess, they land and attack. The samurai commander sees this from the ridge above the beach. He's watched foreign ships before, traders, fishermen, the occasional pirate, but nothing like this. These ships don't slow down on approach, they accelerate. And the men coming off them aren't forming up into neat lines. They're screaming. He gives the order. 300 archers step to the tree line and draw. The first volley launches at 180 feet, arrows at 400 feet per second, nearly flat trajectory at this range, punching into the advancing mass of shields and iron. 17 Vikings go down in the first 4 seconds. The shield wall doesn't stop, it contracts. Shields angling upward, formation tightening, and keeps moving forward. The second volley hits at 130 feet. 19 more down. The wall is still moving. This is the moment the samurai commander realizes something is wrong. His archers have just put 36 men on the ground in under 10 seconds. A kill rate that would have broken any Japanese clan formation he's ever faced. And the enemy hasn't even paused, hasn't looked back, hasn't broken step. Third volley, 100 feet. The shield wall hits its sprint. What happens next takes 11 seconds. The Skjalborg compresses from a walk into a full charge, covering the last 100 feet before the archers can loose a fourth volley. The Vikings crash into the samurai front line like a wave hitting a seawall, not breaking it, but staggering it, pushing it back 3 steps, 4 steps, killing the space the samurai need to use their swords properly. Then the berserkers come through the flanks. 6 of them on the left side, 4 on the right, not running in formation, running at individuals. Axes swinging in wide arcs that ignore the geometry of proper swordsmanship entirely. A samurai trained for 10,000 hours in precise blade technique suddenly faces a 200-pound man with a bearded axe, who isn't following any rule he's ever trained against. The left flank buckles. For the first 15 minutes, it looks like a Viking victory. The shield wall holds the center. The berserkers are tearing holes in both flanks, and the samurai formation is fragmenting. Small groups of 2 and 3 fighters getting isolated, surrounded, pulled down. The beach is chaos. The Viking war cries are so loud the samurai commanders on the ridge can barely hear each other's signals. Then, the samurai do something the Vikings have never seen. They retreat. On purpose, in perfect order. Not a rout, not a collapse. A calculated withdrawal up the slope toward the tree line, pulling the Viking formation off the flat beach and onto broken ground where a shield wall can't maintain its geometry, where the footing is uneven, where the compressed mass of iron and muscle that makes the Skjalborg lethal on flat ground suddenly becomes a liability. The Vikings follow. Of course they follow. They're winning. And that's exactly the problem. Because retreating in formation up a slope while under pressure isn't something you do by accident. It takes 300 years of institutional military knowledge to pull off under those conditions. The samurai aren't running, they're reloading. And while that's happening, the second samurai archer line, 200 men who've been waiting in the trees since before the ships landed, steps into position above the advancing Viking mass. At 40 feet, pointing straight down, 200 arrows launch simultaneously from 40 feet above the Viking mass. At that range, the Yumi doesn't need to penetrate armor. It needs to land. And it does. Not in a volley pattern across a wide front, straight down, into the compressed mass of men who are packed so tightly from the shield wall formation that there's nowhere to step, nowhere to turn, nowhere to go that isn't already occupied by another Viking's body. 60 men go down in 3 seconds. The shield wall doesn't collapse, but it stops. And a shield wall that stops is no longer a shield wall. It's a target. The Viking commander reads the situation in under 5 seconds. He's fought in narrow fjords, on river bridges, in burning longhouses. He's never fought on a slope under plunging arrow fire, with his formation compressed from below and above simultaneously. There's no counter in the doctrine for this. The Skjalborg works on flat ground, against enemies who fight forward. It has no answer for enemies who are above you, shooting down, who retreated there on purpose. He orders the berserkers forward. It's the right instinct. Wrong situation. The 6 berserkers who tore through the left flank 15 minutes ago are still dangerous. But they're also winded, operating on broken ground, and now separated from the main formation by 40 feet of slope. When they charge upward toward the tree line, they're not hitting a fragmented flank. They're hitting a prepared samurai line that's been standing still, breathing, waiting, with swords already drawn. The first berserker takes 2 arrows before he covers half the distance. He keeps moving. This is what berserkers do. He takes a 3rd arrow at 20 feet and finally goes down 6 feet from the samurai line. The samurai don't celebrate. They don't break formation to finish him. They hold the line and let the next archer handle it. That's the difference. The Vikings fight as individuals inside a collective system. When the system breaks, the individuals are still dangerous, but they're individuals. The samurai fight as a collective that never stops being a collective. Every man knows his position, his role, his moment. There's no improvisation. There's no heroics. There's just the line, and the line holds. Within 20 minutes of the second archer volley, the Viking formation has lost over 200 men and is fragmenting into 3 separate groups on the slope. The largest group, around 600 warriors, is still trying to push upward. The second group, around 300 men, has broken left along the beach looking for flat ground. The third group, around 200, is moving back toward the ships. The samurai commander sends his cavalry after the beach group. 40 mounted samurai, armed with yumi, hit 300 men on open flat ground, with no shield wall formation and no cover. It's not a battle, it's a harvest. The group heading for the ships makes it. Roughly 160 men reach the water, push the drakkars off the sand, and get clear of the shore. They're alive. They're not coming back. That leaves 600 Vikings on the slope. The samurai line advances now, not charging, walking. The same controlled, measured forward movement that samurai commanders have used for 3 centuries of internal warfare, closing the distance deliberately, giving the archers time for one more volley before the blades make contact. The volley launches at 80 feet. Then the katanas come out. What follows isn't a battle anymore. It's a systematic conclusion. The Viking warriors fight hard, every single one of them, to the last step. The shield wall tries to reform 3 separate times on the slope. 3 separate times, the samurai line absorbs the pressure, holds, and pushes back. Without flat ground, without momentum, without the psychological shock of the initial charge, the Skjalborg is just a group of exhausted men holding shields uphill. By midday, the slope is silent. The samurai haven't broken a sweat. Not because the Vikings weren't dangerous, because discipline at this level doesn't panic, doesn't overextend, doesn't chase. It just waits for the moment the fury runs out, and fury always runs out. When the smoke clears, the beach looks like a different place than it did at dawn. 40 drakkars landed here this morning. 160 men made it back to the water. The rest, over 1,000 fighters, the most feared raiders in the Western world, are on the slope, on the sand, in the shallows. The samurai garrison hasn't moved from its position on the ridge. It's still a garrison, still a line, still intact. So who wins? The samurai. And it's not close. But here's what matters. The Vikings didn't lose because they were inferior warriors. They lost because they brought the right weapon to the wrong terrain. The Skjalborg is one of the most effective infantry formations ever developed. on flat ground, against enemies who fight in the same dimension. The moment the samurai pulled them off the beach and onto the slope, they didn't just change the geography. They deleted the Viking tactical system entirely. The berserkers were real. The shield wall was real. The aggression was real. None of it mattered above the tree line. The samurai won for 3 reasons. First, range. The Yumi kept the Vikings bleeding before the first sword left its scabbard. Second, adaptability. The controlled retreat up the slope wasn't desperation. It was the entire plan. Third, discipline. When the berserkers charged, the samurai line didn't flinch, didn't break, didn't chase. It held and let the fury exhaust itself. First range, then terrain, then the blade. Now imagine this same matchup on a frozen Scandinavian fjord, with no slope, no tree line, and nowhere to retreat. The samurai archers lose their elevation. The Skalborg has flat ground from shore to shore. The berserkers hit the line before the third volley lands. That's a completely different battle. And that's the point. Neither of these armies is unbeatable. They're both perfectly engineered killing systems built for specific conditions. Put them in each other's conditions, and the outcome flips. The 160 Vikings who made it back to the ships don't go home. They anchor 2 miles offshore and wait. Because Vikings don't retreat, they regroup. Or what do you think would happen if they tried again? Drop it in the comments. Thanks for watching.